You've spent an awful lot of time in the tech community also. So you mentioned three specific areas. You mentioned media and technology and the intelligence community. I want to go through each one of those. So tech, you've spent a lot of time in because you work closely with Peter Thiel, who obviously is deeply involved in everything Silicon Valley has to offer. I've been complaining for a long time about the inherent biases of places like Facebook and YouTube, and it's pretty obvious to folks, including Dave Rubin, that YouTube has a biased algorithm that demonetizes particular points of view. Facebook has on occasion really punished people on the right for, I believe, political reasons. Is there anything that can be done about this in any real sense, or are we just at the whims of what are essentially monopolies? I mean, Facebook has the closest thing to a monopoly that I've seen in modern American life, and I'm not an antitrust guy by nature, but the fact is there's no competing service that even comes close to the sort of control that Facebook has over social media, and people have spent millions of dollars promoting material on Facebook to have Facebook gobble that up and then turn back an algorithm that is dishonest and disingenuous in many cases. Is that something that can be dealt with, or is the only answer regulation or the building of alternative methods of distribution?
Yeah, I think that this is a really interesting and difficult problem. I believe that there's actually a set of new problems that came about from the fact that this technology, giving everybody the power of their own newspaper, let's say, to publish their own newspaper, is a new feature of the world. And it's not clear to me that free speech can just go on as before because of how big of a shift this particular new idea is. If I get a hold of some very dangerous secrets, before anybody knows it, I can have published it on Instagram or Facebook or who knows what. So I think that there are actually a new suite of problems that are probably going to have to change jurisprudence if we're going to keep the spirit of the Constitution alive. And I don't know what that's going to be, but I think that that's going to be a change. When these companies found that they had these problems, that people didn't want to be on the networks because everything was so unpleasant when everyone was getting all information all the time, I think that they tried to get community policing. Whoever the people were complaining the loudest, if you were complaining loudly, you might become a Truth and Safety Commission member. And so effectively, all of the most noisy, most upsettable folks ended up in these positions of some power and influence. And a lot of the suggestions that they've made have been lousy to people who have a very strongly rational perspective. Nobody's perfectly rational, but the idea being that lots of things that we talk about that should be discussable by adults in an adult fashion, if let's say my brother mentions genotype and phenotype as a biologist, and someone has a freak out session because they think that that's evidence of his bigotry, that person who's freaking out needs to be downregulated and not listened to. So it's very important that we not overvalue the loudest and shrillest voices. But the tech companies, I don't think, figured out how to do that. Furthermore, I think that what I don't understand is the extent to which what I call the gated institutional narrative, or GIN, depended upon there being very few outlets to check or challenge what the major thematic narratives would be. And I think that there's a real difficulty with people who came up in the previous world before the internet and before social media, trying to figure out how to exert enough party level discipline in order to have these sort of long narratives that we remember from the era of Walter Cronkite and Eric Sevareid. And that's gone away. It's never coming back unless somebody does something drastic. So I think it's very important to understand there were some problems and we haven't had good solutions. But what is terrifying me is that I don't know what part of this might be directed and what part of this is emergent. I don't know if there have always been people behind the scenes looking to manipulate the media. And what I don't know is if those hands are currently using the power of these algorithms in a way that has nothing to do with providing a more engaging and pleasant product. So it's necessary, and almost certainly, we need control over the algorithms. I need to be able to experiment and flick a switch and say, I want to see things in the order that they were published. I want to see things without you prioritizing this or upregulating and downregulating that. Give me the toggle switches and the control so that fundamentally I can catch you if I see that you are politically manipulating. So for example, on Twitter, I never know which of these accounts are authentic. If I tweet something and 20 accounts have very similar statements like, ha, 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 what an idiot, Okay, that's going to make me feel a particular way. What if those accounts are all owned by one person and then they're programmed to do that? We don't know which percentage of this is authentic.